I discovered my fiancée was planning to marry another man in her coastal hometown, so I crashed the ceremony with evidence of our engagement and exposed her deception to everyone. At 28, I thought I had found my perfect match. As a software engineer in Denver, I lived a relatively structured life until meeting Sophia at a tech industry fundraiser. We connected instantly over shared interests and similar outlooks on life. Within a year, we were engaged and living together in my downtown apartment, planning what I believed would be our future. Sophia had mentioned she was originally from a small coastal town in Oregon, where much of her family still lived. She would travel there occasionally for what she described as family gatherings or emergencies. I never questioned these trips. Why would I? Trust formed the foundation of our relationship, or so I naively believed. The first sign that something wasn't right appeared when I found a peculiar note in our apartment while cleaning one weekend. It contained handwritten addresses, a circled date, and references to a beachside wedding venue in her hometown. When I casually asked about it, Sophia gave a dismissive answer. "Just exploring some options for our destination wedding, babe," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes before quickly changing the subject. Something about her response felt off, but I pushed the concern aside. Over the following weeks, however, I noticed her growing increasingly secretive with her phone. She'd take calls in other rooms, speaking in hushed tones, and would abruptly end conversations when I entered. "Work stuff," she'd explain with a forced laugh. "Just talking to a colleague about this difficult client." Sophia worked as a marketing consultant, which made her explanation plausible, but inconsistencies were mounting. Meanwhile, whenever I tried to finalize details for our wedding, she'd create delays, claiming she was overwhelmed with client projects. My mother commented during a dinner at my parents' home that it seemed unusual for a bride to show such little enthusiasm about wedding preparations. I defended Sophia, attributing her behavior to stress, but my mother's observation planted a seed of doubt. The truth crashed into my life unexpectedly through a text from Marco, a college friend who had relocated to that same Oregon coastal town. His message was cryptic, asking if Sophia and I had an open relationship. Confused, I called him immediately. "I saw her yesterday at Lighthouse Point restaurant," Marco explained hesitantly. "She was with another man. They looked intimate. She was wearing what looked like an engagement ring, but it wasn't the one I saw in your Instagram photos." My world tilted on its axis. Marco, sensing my shock, offered to discreetly observe them. He later sent me several photos showing Sophia and a tall, dark-haired man touring what appeared to be an upscale beachfront wedding venue. In every image, she beamed up at him with the same adoration I thought she reserved for me, a different ring glittering on her finger. That evening, when she returned to our apartment, I watched her closely as she cheerfully recounted a fabricated day with coworkers. Her performance was flawless, relaxed, natural, and completely false. The disconnect between this woman I thought I knew and the evidence of her duplicity made me physically ill, but I maintained my composure, deciding to gather more information before confronting her. Over the next few days, I methodically investigated while maintaining a facade of normalcy. I discovered bank statements showing substantial deposits from an unfamiliar source, possibly her other fiancé's family. I found flight confirmations in her email for the following week to Oregon, coinciding with what Marco had learned was the scheduled wedding date at that beachfront venue. The picture emerging was surreal. Sophia appeared to be running an elaborate con, simultaneously engaged to two men in different states, potentially extracting financial support from both of us while planning to marry the other guy. She had told me she needed to visit Oregon for an aunt's medical procedure, but the timing aligned perfectly with her apparent wedding plans. I confided in my father, a retired judge, who listened with growing anger as I outlined the situation. "Don't let her humiliate you like this," he advised, his voice tight with controlled fury. "You need to expose this before she can hurt you further." With my father's support, I formulated a plan. I booked a flight to Oregon scheduled to arrive the morning of what I now knew was Sophia's wedding day. I told her I was attending a coding conference in Seattle, a story she accepted without question, further confirming her disinterest in my activities as long as they didn't interfere with her schemes. The day of departure, Sophia kissed me goodbye with unusual enthusiasm. "I'll miss you," she said with a smile that now seemed sinister in its falseness. "Give me a call when you land." "Of course," I replied, maintaining my composure despite the churning in my stomach. "See you soon." Hours later, I arrived in her picturesque coastal hometown. Marco met me at the airport, and together we drove to the Ocean View Wedding Pavilion, where staff were busy arranging flowers and decorating for what promised to be an elegant ceremony. A sign at the entrance read, "Celebrating Sophia Nathan," confirming my worst fears. I'd brought a portfolio containing irrefutable evidence, recent photos of Sophia and me together, showing her wearing my engagement ring, text conversations dated within the past week discussing our wedding plans, and financial records showing how she'd used my money for what she claimed were deposits for our ceremony. As guests began arriving, Marco and I positioned ourselves discreetly near a side entrance. Through the windows, I caught glimpses of Sophia in a flowing white gown, radiant as she prepared to pledge herself to someone else, while I was supposedly hundreds of miles away at a conference. The ceremony began with classical music drifting through the pavilion. I waited, pulse racing, for the perfect moment. As the officiant reached the traditional "speak now or forever hold your peace" portion, I entered through the side door and walked deliberately down the aisle. A collective gasp rippled through the gathering. Sophia froze mid-smile, her face draining of color as she recognized me. The groom, tall and confused, looked from her to me with growing bewilderment. "I apologize for interrupting," I announced, voice steady despite my racing heart, "but I believe there's something everyone here should know before this proceeds." Sophia lunged forward, panic evident in her eyes. "This man is disturbed," she hissed. "Security, please remove him." I opened my portfolio, withdrawing the most damning evidence. "My name is Alex. Until 10 minutes ago, I was engaged to Sophia. We live together in Denver, where she's been simultaneously planning our wedding while apparently arranging this one as well." I displayed recent photographs clearly showing Sophia wearing my engagement ring, date-stamped messages about our future together, and financial statements demonstrating her use of my funds for supposed wedding arrangements. The groom, Nathan, stared at the evidence, his expression hardening as understanding dawned. Murmurs swept through the assembled guests. Sophia's mother clutched her chest in shock while Nathan's parents exchanged horrified glances. "This is absurd," Sophia protested, voice rising hysterically. "Those are old photos, from before we broke up." I calmly displayed a video call recording dated 3 days prior, showing Sophia discussing our wedding plans from what was clearly her hotel room in Oregon. The timestamp was unmistakable. Nathan stepped away from her, his face a mask of disgust. "You've been engaged to him this entire time?" he demanded. "Living with him in Colorado while planning our wedding?" Sophia's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. She alternated between accusing me of stalking her and claiming I'd fabricated the evidence. When those tactics failed, she dissolved into tears, attempting to paint herself as the victim of circumstance. "I loved you both differently," she wailed, an admission that silenced the room. Nathan's father, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, approached the altar. "I think we've seen enough," he stated firmly. "This ceremony is over." Within minutes, the wedding dissolved into chaos. Guests began departing in uncomfortable silence or outraged clusters. The officiant quietly packed away his materials while the wedding planner stood frozen in disbelief. Nathan conferred briefly with his parents before walking out without a backward glance at Sophia, who had collapsed into a chair, mascara streaking down her face. I felt no satisfaction in her distress, only relief that the truth had emerged before either of us could be further deceived. As I turned to leave, Sophia rushed toward me, grabbing my arm. "Why couldn't you just let me go?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Why did you have to ruin everything?" I gently removed her hand. "You ruined it yourself when you decided to live a double life," I replied quietly. "All I did was bring the truth to light." In the aftermath, I learned that Nathan had canceled everything, demanding refunds where possible and threatening legal action for fraud. Sophia bombarded me with messages alternating between vitriol and pleas for forgiveness, all of which I ignored, as I focused on rebuilding my life. The betrayal left deep scars, but I'm gradually healing. My work as a software engineer provides welcome distraction, and supportive friends have helped me process the deception. My father reminds me that I handled an impossible situation with dignity, exposing a truth that needed to be revealed. Sometimes I wonder what drove Sophia to such elaborate deception. Was it greed, fear of commitment, or something more complex? I'll likely never know. What matters is that I walked away with my integrity intact, wiser about the sometimes vast distance between appearances and reality. If you've enjoyed this story of deception uncovered and justice served, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more tales of relationship drama and personal triumph over betrayal.